Okay, we start with Krista.
Good evening, Miss Archer. Good evening, everyone.
Yes, you're with BOB.
Yes,
What,
ma'am.
what do you do?
So I'm with Bank of the Bahamas. My current position is a senior client relationship officer there. I've been with the bank now for about 2.5 years, I would say. I worked in commercial banking for a number of years, probably altogether, maybe going on a decade. Didn't want to age myself, but this will be my first exposure to credit and mortgages in particular, and I'm excited for the opportunity.
Okay, all right. Veronique.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Veronique Joseph. I've been with the Public Treasury for over 20 years, and I want to change career into real estate. So I figured mastering mortgage could be a start for me. And yeah, I'm just excited, like Krista said, to get started.
Okay, you've already started the real estate training?
I have, yes.
Okay, and you like it?
I love it.
Oh, wonderful.
I love it.
Ready to make those big bucks?
In the matter of speaking, yes.
Okay, all right then. What is Neely?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anais Neely. Would you like me to say my position and everything?
It's up to you. Why you're taking the course? So yeah, up to you.
Yes, I enrolled for the course because I would like to obtain a position as a mortgage officer. So that was
okay.
Ma'am, that was my intention with selecting this course.
Okay, all right. You're working now at a commercial bank?
I'm currently employed at Bank of the Bahamas.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This looks like this is where the money is at.
Pardon?
Looks as where the money is at.
I guess so. A lot of people from Bank of the Bahamas here.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Miller?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Ms. Archer, and good evening, class.
Good.
My name is Sinovi Miller. Can you guys hear me? Yeah?
Yes, can. Yes.
Okay, yeah. My name is Sinovi Miller. Taking this course to further expand my knowledge, and I work in several industries, and so it's always a plus when you can take a course such as this. So I'm excited about the course and looking forward to the information that we will all gain from this course.
Okay, all right. Who's next? I see, what is this? Kotora? Is that a?
It's Katora Johnson. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Katora Johnson, and I am currently employed with Bank of the Bahamas as a relationship officer. I have done mortgages, however, I would like to be certified in that field. So that's the reason why I decided to take on the course.
Okay, all right.
Knowledge is power.
Okay, that's fine. Michelle?
Sorry, good afternoon. Trying to unmute myself.
Oh, good.
My name is Michelle Lynn Forbes James. I like to use all my name because it's so common. And so if I use all of it, people will get to know me better. I currently serve as the branch manager for the Freeport branch at BOB. I've been with BOB for 3 years now. However, I have been with commercial banking for the past 29 years as I worked previously with Commonwealth Bank. And so I guess I want to have my certification in cost of mortgages. I've done mortgages to some degree, but not a great degree. And so I would like to get to know more. And like the others, I'm excited about learning more about the
Okay.
course.
All right. Who's next? Shantina?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good
So my name is Shantina Diaz. I am employed with Fidelity. I am a personal banking representative, but in short, that's a loan officer. I've been with Fidelity almost 2 years. I enrolled in the course. I enrolled in the course for several reasons. I love people, I love customer service. And even though I'm in the lending industry now, in the credit industry, as a financial coach, I want to impact persons more in a more meaningful and impactful way. So as one of the financial coaches, most persons that I speak with are interested in mortgages. And though I try to add value to everyone that I meet, there's nothing like teaching person or helping somebody achieve their own piece of property or achieving something that they can be able to leave for the inheritance as for their children or their children's children. And one of the things that I recently did, which was the nail on the head for me, was I did a financial presentation, and I would have did what rent costs for, let's say, 30 years, and I would have done what the mortgage would cost. And I would have shared, I said, you pay for a house regardless. You either pay somebody else's house or you pay for your own. So I see myself as a change agent. I see myself as someone that wants to definitely make a difference career-wise and also in the lives of our people. I want to be able to be a part of that force that brings people into their own, of course, with good lending within the guidelines, TDSR and so forth. But I definitely want to be able to offer more than my position now, cars and education and vacation and so forth, but something more generational asset, something that would be definitely impacted and make a difference in the lives of family members. But that's
Okay.
my reason.
Okay, all right, that's a good one. Would you mind sharing your presentation with the class later down in one of the other classes?
Oh, okay, no problem. I can do that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll decide. But I'll let you know which class it would fit in, the module. And then you could share whatever was the PowerPoint, or if you just want to just discuss it in class, whatever you want to share with the other students, and I'd let you do that. That should be quite interesting and build up good conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. All right, who's next? Stacy?
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Stacy Knowles, and I am the Assistant Branch Manager with responsibility for the sales department at Bank of the Bahamas. I've been there a little over 2 years. Can you hear me? Because I hear some other noise in the back. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, so I have a pretty sound background in mortgages. However, my certification was from the Institute of Canadian Bankers because I came from CIBC. So I was interested in taking this course because I'm with Bank of the Bahamas now. I've never done a certification from a Bahamian institution. So I was curious to see if there was anything different and also to add to my working knowledge of mortgages.
Okay, all right. Well, it's so someone is next. Yvette? Yvette?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Yvette Johnson. I am manager of Premier and Private Banking at Bank of the Bahamas. I've been in banking with Bank of the Bahamas for the past 23 years. I've been in a lot of other areas of the bank outside of mortgage. Mortgage is kind of new to me. And in the area that I'm in now, we have a moratorium on corporate lending. However, we anticipate that will be lifted soon from the central bank. And so at this time, I want to expand my knowledge in lending and mortgages on the whole. And so that's why I signed for the course. There are a couple other team members from the Premier and Private Banking Department also on during the course. So hopefully we'll be able to put our heads together and come together to expand our knowledge in this area.
Okay. I thought I just, as each one of you were going through just a little bio, you know, ideas start coming to my head. Krista knows I pick these things off the cuff as they go.
Yes, I do.
There is a midterm. Okay, normally this class only had a final exam. But over the past couple sessions, a lot of students complain that it is really too much material to be tested on at one time. And so they have asked for a midterm exam. So are you all interested in a midterm and a final, or you just want a cumulative final that includes everything?
So if I understand, if we do a midterm and a final, you'll break down the information, probably give us test half of our knowledge at midterm, and then do it the other half, the balance at the final?
More or less, yes. Because, you know, certain things are required even at the final end, but not in that much detail as you would do it in a midterm.
I think I prefer.
My vote would be,
I think I prefer two.
my vote would be midterm and final.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I agree. Yes.
Me too. I agree.
General consensus midterm.
Midterm.
All right. Now, that midterm can be, the final is usually short answers. You'll see as we start to go through this course, I will refer to you a lot of cases, Bahamian cases. And there are some English ones, but mostly Bahamian ones that you're going to have to read. You're going to refer to those when you answer your questions. For the midterm, I can do it as a multiple choice and short answer, or I can prepare it as just short answers. Which do you prefer?
It's multiple for me.
Multiple choice.
Yes.
Multiple choice.
Definitely multiple. Definitely.
Yes, multiple.
Miss Archer.
Can we do all multiple?
Yes, I was thinking
Yeah,
the same
that's-
thing. Like, oh,
And then the
I
final
agree.
to be short answers.
yes, I did weird that.
Let me tell you, excited crew. My last two classes agreed they wanted all multiple. The results was not what they expected. Think good now. You sure that's what you?
Ms. Archer, sorry, Michelle Lynn here. I prefer a mixture because I'm also an educator. And I feel that my degree is in education as well. But I feel that with short answers, like I tell my classes all the time, with short answers, you can rake up a couple points if you hit the point. But in multiple choices, which I don't like,
Either right or wrong.
either right or wrong.
Y'all could think about it and let me know next class.
All right.
Think about it, and you could come back. And then for the final, normally just short answers.
I have a question, Ms. Archer. Do you know or have an opinion as to why they might have not done that well with it being solely multiple choice?
The answers were rather close. So either you knew it or you just didn't know it.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to you all. Think about it. If you feel like you're good at it, maybe
I prefer a mixture again. But anyways, you say think about it.
think about it.
It's a mixture. Okay.
Yeah. Think about it and then you can decide. So that's always the good thing about it. You get this week and next week, think about it, and you could let me know what you think. All right, so everybody got a copy of the manual, correct?
Not as yet.
Yes.
Not as
We're
yet.
Oh,
Not
for
as yet.
Freeport.
Not as yet.
Not as yet either.
Oh.
Yes, I got one.
That's
Most
for
of the
Bank of
BOB,
the
I got
most of
Bahamas.
the
one.
BOB people haven't gotten yet. We told
Yeah,
maybe
she's
tomorrow.
packaging them. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay. All right. So anyhow, let's start. We'll start, and then next class, once you will have your manual, you can read the first module, and then you could ask whatever questions that you have. And then we can go through it again before we go into the second module. So the first module is really about Bahamian land law. And Bahamian land law is, remember, the first thing about land law is that nobody owns land. What people actually own is an interest in land, but they don't own land. So when you talk about land, people use that word property. And property means ownership. So the law of property, because remember the act is called, what's the name of the act that governs mortgages? Anybody? Anybody knows?
I doesn't.
Yeah, it's called the Conveyancing and Law.
Conveyancing Act. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the Conveyancing and Law Property Act. So that's the first piece of legislation that you're going to print. If you want to print all of it, or you could just print the sections as relevant to mortgages. So when you talk about property, you're talking about ownership. And ownership means connected rights, because you don't own the land. So really, when you say, I have a piece of property, referring to land, you're saying that you have rights to that land. So what does it mean when you say, I have ownership? Ownership is really the right of a person to enjoy that property as the law permits. Or it was what you can term as a right to assert something that you own. So that means that you can assert for anybody else who comes on that property that you own that property. So when you talk about ownership, ownership really, again, refers to having rights. And ownership in property is regarded as having what they call the trinity of rights. You have a right to use it. That means you have exclusive use. And you could prevent others from using that property. You can profit from it, which means that you can rent it out, or you can have shares or dividends from that property. And of course, by having property, you can diminish it. And diminish it means that you can actually destroy it. Cut down the trees that is on it, you can set it afire, you can burn it, or you can alienate it. And alienated means that you transfer that ownership to someone else. And you can transfer it to someone as a gift, or you can sell it. So property means ownership. Ownership is connected to rights. And ownership has 3 rights. So even though you own property, you can actually lose possession of that property, but you don't lose the title of it. So losing property that you just merely possess means that you lose physical control and any right to exclude persons from controlling it. You have any questions? Because you have to understand the concept of ownership.
Could you clarify that a bit, maybe with an example or something, please, Ms. Archer?
Okay. It's as if you have, let's say you have a piece of property. When you have a piece of property, you have a conveyance. And in that conveyance, if you read it properly, it gives you rights. So that conveyancing gives you the title to that property. It says that you are the owner. So even though you have that piece of property and you are the owner, you can build on that property. You can rent out apartments or condominiums on that property. So you could lose possession of it because you're not in it, but you don't lose your title. So in addition to the trinity of rights, there are other rights.
I'm
And if-
sorry, Ms. Archer, the Trinity, which means three, those are the three rights that you're talking about.
Yeah, the rights to use it, the right to profit from it, and the other right could be either to diminish it or to transfer it to someone else.
Got you.
Right,
Thank
okay. But there are other rights when you own property. And if you look at a conveyance, you may see these words such as easement, or you may see the word profit, or you may see the word restrictive covenant. Those are other rights that run with the land. So an easement is the right over one piece of land that attaches to and benefits another piece of land. So that means that that right as an easement stays with the landowner, but another person is given the right to use that land. But it has to be for a particular purpose. So if you look sometimes on a person's property, let's say someone has a corner lot. I've seen one on Yamacraw Hill Road. Someone has a house and their yard is fenced in right on the corner. But in that yard, you see a tall telecommunications pole. You've seen that before on people's property?
Yes,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have.
So that means that BPL has the right to come onto that property and do whatever they need to do with that pole because they have an easement. It gives them access to. Now, the next one is a profit. A profit is different from an easement. So here you're talking about the right of one party, and that one party takes part of the soil or the minerals in a land that is owned by another party. But the land doesn't have to be adjacent. They don't have to be next to each other. But when you talk about easement, they actually have to be adjacent. So what a profit does is it makes what we call the dominant tenement to take either part of a land itself, or it could take parts of things that grow on the land, or they could take living creatures that grow in the land or in the waters within the other person's property. So let's say if you watch, how many of you watch Western movie?
I do.
Those old ones, because I know they're normally on YouTube. You notice when they have herds of animals, you see them cross over into other persons
Mhm.
in order for the cows to drink the water.
Or eat the grass, yeah.
Yes, okay, that's profit. So both these rights, easement and profit, they're really what we call proprietary estoppel. So they act to make sure that what we call the servient landowner, it prevents them from restricting the rights from the dominant person. So that would actually be in the conveyance. Now, whenever a lawyer looks at a document, they're looking at the conveyance, and they're looking when they do the whole review of how the land passed from owner to owner to owner to owner, the transfer. They have to be sure that the easement or the profit is valid. And in order to do that, they have to satisfy certain criteria. The first is there has to be a dominant and a servient tenement. The easement has to accommodate the dominant tenement. And the two owners cannot be the same person.
Can you think of any current situation? I mean, outside of the Western, I get it, the Western, where a property can be used for profit?
The only thing I can think about is where we probably do farming on the out island.
Okay.
Because you have to be coming on the land to get something. We don't do,
Right.
we don't mine here. We don't mineral.
Okay.
Yeah. So another right is what we have is called restrictive covenants. And restrictive covenants is not really a part of property law, it's really a part of contract law. But in certain conveyances, you will see a restrictive covenant. And in a restricted covenant, the owner of the land states in their words how the property should be utilized. So sometimes they'll say this land is not to be used to facilitate the sale of alcohol. There are some properties that have certain restrictive covenants in it. So now we know property, ownership, you have rights. You have the trinity of rights, and then you also have other rights. Now I know you are familiar with generational property. And the problem with generational property is there is no documentary title to that land. It can't be sold. And of course, there's no certainty of ownership to whatever tract of land. And of course, because there's no ownership of a particular plot or tract of land, then of course, legal title cannot pass from one person to another. Does anyone have generational property?
And Andros.
Yes, ma'am. I guess, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay.
I just have a question
Go ahead.
with generational property. I
Mhm.
heard you said I know you cannot sell it. Now, in terms of who gets what, how would that be divided?
Because it's
Or-
generational. Okay, so let's just say when the slave master would have given the property over to the slaves at that point in time, let's say it was 12 of them.
Uh-huh.
Those 12 would have divided that property up amongst themselves.
Okay.
If they didn't do it, then that means that all generations from those 12 can build
Have
on
access.
a plot of land anywhere.
Mm.
Instances, those 12 families would have actually divided up that land. And so if you're the child of Miss Sue Mary Smith, then her tract of land may be lots number 1 through 10. And any of her generation, as long as they go to the head of that clan, can say, I am the great-grandchild or the great-great-grandchild of Mary, and this is my father, father, you can build on that land.
Okay. Thank you.
So to acquire a documentary title to generation land, you do that through adverse possession. An adverse possession, you have to be in possession of the land. And for next class, we're going to look at some cases to deal with adverse possession. You must also have the intention to possess the land. And of course, you have to be on that land for a certain length of time. Those are the 3 criteria for adverse possession. So if you—
Miss Archer, sorry,
Mhm.
can you repeat that what you just said, to acquire adverse possession, the 3 that you just mentioned?
You must have factual possession of the land. It's in your notes, so don't write it down. Factual possession. You must have the intention to possess the land, and you have to be there for a certain length of time. Now, if you read the papers on a weekly basis, you will see lots of ads in the paper, and the heading says at the top, quieting of title. You seeing that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that's persons now who are claiming adverse possession.
Ms. Archer, would this be the same as squatters' rights? Is this similar?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Archer, I have a question,
Go
please.
ahead.
Okay, so if I were to live in like Nassau, but I have, well, you hear your parents say that you have properties on the family island. Now, I've not been living there, but can my mom acquire for a generational property, a piece of generational property for me there, and then I can go there, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, she can, but again, like I say, she has to be able to prove to whoever is the survivor of the clan, the old survivor of the clan, that she is a descendant.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So most of those
And they have to agree, correct?
they all have to agree. And they have, I think they have like reunions every 2 to 3 years where all the clan goes back. So you have to really get to know your family.
Okay, thanks.
That's the problem right there. They ain't gonna agree.
Well, that's true too.
She look like a driftwood.
Okay.
You have in cases now where a very old person, like say in 70s and their 80s, they appear not to be leaving properties for their generation. I'm not talking about generational property itself, but property that they own outright. They're actually selling it.
Okay.
Yeah. from a selling property. So what's factual possession? Factual possession means that you have physical control over that land. And like I say, we're gonna read a couple cases on it. When I send you cases, it's expected that you would read it. In my email, I will tell you which one of you will be presenting that to the class. Don't duck out. So if you can't make it, say so when I send the email. If you know for a fact that you'll be missing a class, rather than we come and then no one is prepared to present. So I'll send the cases and I'll say, this person is presenting, that person is presenting. And then the following class, we'll have different cases, someone else will present. So what people do, so let's say if you had purchased a piece of land and was transferred to you, so you have your conveyance, and you notice that next door to you, there is a piece of vacant land. You don't see anybody coming. Nobody is looking at it. No one's cutting it down. No one said anything to you. So maybe after 5 to 6 years, you may decide to grow some peas on it, some bean, a banana tree, put a sea grape tree. Or you may decide to just fence it in and mow the lawn, put some lawn grass on it. You decide to do other things. But what you're trying to do is establish that you have control over that piece of land. That's what factual possession is. Now, there are some instances where the person will actually build a structure on that land to say they have factual possession. So once you have that factual possession, you put your fence around, you mow your lawn every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or you water your okra trees or bean or whatever it is you grow, then you have to demonstrate that you have an intention to possess that land. So that means people see you walking around and taking care of that property. And as far as everybody is aware, that land is yours. No one has ever come to say, why are you on this piece of property? Now, you have to be on the land for 12 years or more if you want to bring a claim for adverse possession. If anytime within that 12 years, the actual owner comes to that property and says, what are you doing on my property? Time stops. It begins again the next day. If the land is owned by the Crown for a period of 30 years and is not beachfront, or 60 years if it is beachfront. So that's one of the things you have to be careful of when you are claiming adverse possession. You have to make sure that time is running. So once the 12 years has gone by, then you could apply to the Supreme Court to have the land investigated, determined, and declared. If you are successful, you will receive a certificate of title, and that gives you documentary title to that piece of property. Now I'm going to give you cases where you can see where two different persons are claiming the same property, and each one has a different documentary title. And the court has to decide who is really the owner of that piece of property. So the true ownership or the nature of ownership is really in the title, not the ownership. It's who has the better title in land law. Property law concentrates on possession. So anybody who asserts that they have been dispossessed of land, didn't have the proof if they are the true owner. What he has to prove is he has a better right to possession than the person who is suing him. And normally when you read the cases, you will see that a person with an earlier right to possession normally has a better right to possession. So when someone possesses property, you're talking about having exclusive use and control of that property.
So just want to ask
Go
a
ahead.
question. So in terms of the documentation, whoever has an older documentation in terms of dates, that's what you're referring to?
It's
The
not,
title.
it's dates, and it's also looking at whether there's any breaks within the transfer.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying. The case law will help you more in terms of understanding how the law interprets who has ownership and a better title to that
okay.
property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So someone could say they're in possession, and that possession could mean that they have ownership. And a person in possession of property can have control over that property. And also can have an extension, an intention to be on that property and exclude other people from controlling it. So whenever you deal with land matters, the purchaser always insists on the formal proof of ownership. So that means that whoever is selling that property has to produce the deeds in the form of a certificate of title. And his title deeds demonstrate his strength or his lack thereof of the vendor's title. And that's the key, because even when you're doing a mortgage, when that title goes to the lawyer, that is what the lawyer is doing when he does his abstract of title. He's making sure that the vendor has proof that he has possession of that land. He has a good title. So the title demonstrates the strength or otherwise of the vendor's title. It also shows his right in possession of that land, and it allows the purchaser then to decide whether there is any risk that someone is going to come after him to say that they have a better possession. And you see that even sometimes when persons build, they have a conveyance, they hire a contractor to build a house, and come to find out the contractor build a house on another property. So when you talk about ownership, there are certain things that are capable of ownership. So we know that land is capable of ownership. But we know that a person can own food, books, a horse, a dog, a goat, clothes. Those things are what we call chattels. But there are also things that you can own that are intangibles, such as shares, software, programs, patents, and debts. Those are intangibles. So whenever you're dealing with property, property is classified in two categories. You have real property and you have personal property. Real property is what we call having a freehold interest in land. And that freehold interest in land can be what we call chattels real and chattels personal. Chattels personal can then be further divided into choice in action and choices in possession. So choices in possession is property which don't physically exist and it can't be possessed, such as goodwill or patents. Security for banks, such as charges, are choices in action. Choices in possession, of course, things are like books and clothes. So you'll see a lot of this in terms of property when a person dies. Because that word property doesn't refer to just freehold estate. It can refer to choices in action and choices in possession. So now when you see people use the word under the law of conveyancing and they speak about land, land means real property. And that could also include the building and any structure that's on the land and any rights over that land. Because remember at the very beginning, what did I say? So you could put it in your mind so you begin to understand how property law works. We started out by saying, what is property? It means ownership. And we said that that ownership has 3 rights. In addition to those 3 rights, it has 3 other rights. But when you talk about land, it doesn't include fixtures. And we're talking about fixtures that are not attached to the land or the building. Always remember when you talk about land, realty or real property, that is different from personality or personal property. So land law is really about rights over land, not about the land itself. Who owns land? Anybody? Who owns land?
I think you said
I think you said
nobody owns land.
Nobody can own land.
You have an interest.
Right.
Okay.
Government or state.
Yes, the government owns it. The government owns the land. But you don't own any land. You own an interest in that land. So when you get a mortgage, the freehold land goes to the bank as security. So what it's actually doing is it restricts your freehold right of ownership because you're giving the bank the rights of security over your land. And that could be either a legal mortgage or it can be an equitable mortgage. So when you give a mortgage, the land itself is not affected. What is really affected is the rights over that land. So there are 2 types of rights over land. I just said it to you, a legal right and equitable right. Legal rights could then be either a legal estate or a legal interest. A legal estate is a right of ownership. And what it does is it gives the owner an entitlement to occupy that land. So when you talk about legal estate, there are two forms of legal estate in land. So let's just say you decide right now, Shantina, that you saw in the paper a piece of land out on West Bay Street in the papers, selling for $400,000, and you decide that, guess what? I'm going to go and use the money from an insurance that was given to me by some relative who passed away, and I'm going to purchase this piece of land outright. I'm not getting any loan from the bank. I'm going to have the title investigated. I'm going to have the property conveyed to me. I owe nobody on that piece of land. Then it is said that your interest in that land is in fee simple, absolute in possession. That means that you as the owner have no obligations to nobody for that land. You are what we call a superior tenant. Fee simple means you have an estate in land. And because you have an estate in land, you could sell it to someone else if you wish to. You can give it as a gift to someone else if you wish to, or you can pass it under your will. Or it can pass under the rules of intestacy. Everybody understands what intestacy means?
Is
No,
that
ma'am.
when you pass without a will?
Yes. So when you pass without a will, then that means that your assets will be distributed in accordance with the Inheritance Act. If you've never read the Inheritance Act, then you need to see how your assets will be distributed by the courts if you die without a will. Everybody knows?
Was it changed to indicate that if you die, if you're married, it'll go to your spouse, or 50% to your spouse, and if you have children, the other 50% to them, and then it goes on to other relatives like grandchildren, nieces, nephews, or something like that?
Yes, brothers, uncles, all of them. It goes here. So if you haven't had the chance, you really need to look at it and make a decision if you're going to write a will or not. So absolute means that it is unconditional. You as the owner, you're in possession. And that means that in possession means that you can, on that piece of land, you can collect rent. You can use it to make money. So even if you took that piece of land and you lease it to someone else, you are still in possession. Because you still own the fee simple absolute in possession. The other form of legal estate is a leasehold estate. And a leasehold estate is where a tenant, they derive an estate from a superior tenant who could be the freeholder. So Shantina can take her property that she purchased and she can lease it out to someone else. And that leaseholder owes certain obligations to her. So of course they have to pay rent. Of course, they have to keep up the lease, make sure it doesn't expire. So that whole leasing arrangement is landlord and tenant, or as they say, lessor and lessee. So even though that freeholder has leased that property, that freeholder still has their freehold interest while that lease is going on. So you can take that property and you could lease that property to Mr. X for 60 years. Mr. X can turn around and he can lease that to Mr. A for 50 years. And Mr. A can turn around and lease it to Mr. B for 40 years. Because you can never lease for a longer period than what you have. So anyone with a leasehold is always called a terms of years absolute, which means that your lease is always for a fixed period. It cannot be indefinite.
You said you can't lease it for more than years that you have, but what's the maximum years? Is it 60?
No. Don't forget now, the freeholder can lease it for whatever number of years that they wish.
Mm.
So let's just say if you're in your 20s, you may want to lease it for 70 years because you may be anticipating that you'll be alive at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But that person who leased it from you cannot go beyond that 70 years. They can't lease it to someone beyond 70.
Okay.
Now,
Gotcha.
if they spent 10 years of their lease, then they don't have 70 years to lease. They only have 60.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. So an interest in land is a right to a claim against the land of another person that is less than a claim to possession. And of course, interest in land can either be legal or it can be an equitable interest. Now, legal interest. A legal interest is a right over land and is given to a non-owner, but it's still valid against everyone. And what it does is it gives that non-owner a right, which is less than the actual possession as in a legal estate. And that could be something like a person having a right of way over a neighbor's land. You know, like when you have those property where there's a house in the front and a house in the back and one further in the back, it gives you that right to walk through that person's property, but you don't actually possess it. So then I give you some examples in the notes, such as an easement or right of privilege over the land of another person. It could be a charge by way of a legal mortgage. It could be a charge imposed on land by law. It could be a rent charge, or it could just be a right of entry. So I mentioned to you before, equitable interest. You keep hearing this word, equitable interest. And an equitable interest is a legal right and is valid against anyone who has notice of those rights. And remember, notice can be actual notice or it can be constructive notice. And those are rights at the time of the relevant property transaction. So different types of equitable rights could be the equity of redemption. And that's the right of a mortgagor to redeem the mortgage property once he's paid off all the outstanding principal and interest. One could be an equitable charge. And that's when interest in land is taken as security for a loan without creating a formal legal charge. Or an equitable interest can be a restrictive covenant, an agreement where one person promises to restrict the use of the land for the benefit of another person's adjoining land. So that's what an equitable interest is. So in law, there can be both legal and equitable ownership of a legal interest in land. The legal ownership gives legal title to the estate, and the equitable interest gives the right to benefit from the estate. So you have legal interests and you have equitable interests. So one person could be the legal owner and another person could be the equitable owner of the same property. And you'd see that when you have trust of land. Because in trust law, the land, which is the asset of the trust, the legal interest in that land rests with the trustee. And the beneficiaries of the land have that equitable interest. So the legal owner, the trustee, they hold the legal title in the trust for the beneficiary, because the beneficiary is the equitable owner. And that equitable owner is entitled to the profits from that land. Any questions?
Ms. Archer, can you repeat that last part in terms of the trustee holding the property for
The beneficiaries.
the beneficiaries?
Okay, all right. So
Who?
we're talking about different types of ownership.
Yeah.
And I'm saying you can have a legal and an equitable ownership of a legal estate in land. So what that means is you have an individual, man or woman. When they decide that they want to establish a trust, they are now termed a settlor, a grantor, a donor. The name just depends upon the method upon which they use to create the trust. All of their assets have two interests. It has a legal interest and it has an equitable interest. When that person decides to create a trust, they transfer their title to the trustee. They no longer own those property. They are now owned by the trustee. So depends on what the asset is. The trustee then does what's necessary to take the legal effect of those assets. So the trustee administers and manages those assets for the benefit of the beneficiary. So the beneficiaries in a trust have equitable interest. And that equitable interest gives them rights. So
Understandable.
you understand it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I know because my church is going through a thing where properties were given in trust for the church split, but both sides still have vested interests in the trust. And so any gains from the property, we both have to share the 50-50, whatever income comes from those properties.
Okay. Mhm.
Of course, with the sanction of the trustees as to
Of
what
course, yeah.
money for.
Because remember now, there are different types of trusts. So it depends on when the trust was established and the purpose of it was established for determine how it is or how it will be distributed.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So the legal and the equitable interests are separate. The legal owner can dispose of their legal interests, and the equitable owner can dispose of their equitable interest. So that means that the legal owner, they can go and create a legal or equitable mortgage, whereas the equitable owner can only create an equitable mortgage over the land. Now, another thing you have to be aware of is co-ownership. Interest in land can be owned by more than one person. And where two or more persons hold an interest in land, they are known as co-owners. And there are two forms of co-owners: joint tenancy and tenancy in common. So joint tenancy is two or more persons. They own the whole interest in the land. They don't have any separate and distinct shares in it. So that prohibits any one of them having exclusive possession of the whole of the property. What is joint tenancy really about is the right of survivorship. It gives an automatic legal right to the whole interest in the property to whoever is the last remaining survivor of all the co-owners. So if a joint tenant dies, his interest lapses and the land is then wholly owned by the survivors. Now, normally there's not more than 4 legal joint tenants of land. A tenant may not sell or mortgage his or her legal rights, as the legal joint tenancy cannot be severed in law. However, the joint tenant can sell or mortgage his equitable rights in the land. The next type of co-ownership is tenancy in common. Again, 2 or more persons, they own the land jointly, but it's undivided shares. So each has a share in the land, and it could be equal or unequal. With tenancy in common, there is no right of survivorship. Once one co-owner dies, his or her share in the land doesn't go to the next co-owner. It passes to his personal representative. And then that personal representative is then responsible for distribution. So it could either be by his will, if he died testate, or if he died without a will, then will follow the rules of intestacy. Any questions there? No?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the last part of the module
No.
is land registration. If you are aware, other jurisdictions, even in the Caribbean, have registered land. We have unregistered land.
Excuse me, sorry, Miss Archer.
Mhm.
I just want to be certain because this is, I think I was trying to actually get this. I didn't know that there was actually something for it. Just confirm for me. So if for what you were speaking about a minute ago, the joint tenancy, that's the first one.
Right.
So you're saying to me, if let's just hypothetically say me and my 2 siblings, if we own a house and then All of us have siblings, because I was trying to find a way where we can do it where it doesn't pass to like my daughter, it just goes to the next two sisters as opposed to siblings, like my child. You understand what I mean?
Mhm.
That is what joint tenancy is.
Yes,
Okay, so it will just to survive until it'll be, if I die, God forbid, it will go to my two sisters
yes.
until the last one remains, and then she can do whatever she wants to after that point.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, but if you did it as a tenancy in common, then it would go to your daughter.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question, Ms. Archer, will the information that you're sharing with us now, will that be in the book?
Yeah, it is in the book.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Telling you didn't need to write it down. It's in the book. Once you get your book tomorrow,
It's in a handout.
yeah, you'll send.
Okay.
Yeah, the manual is how many pages? No, hundreds and something pages.
Okay.
I tried not to make it. Okay, so like I was saying to you, you all are aware that other Caribbean countries have registered land, correct? You aware of that?
No.
No.
No, ma'am.
Is Jamaica one of those countries, Ms. Archer?
I know Turks and Caicos is. Seeing and seeing theirs, but let me just double check while I am here. Let me see, laws of Jamaica. I'll have to look it up. Let me see. Right. Look like they do have. I'll let you know by next class because it's quite look for the latest by the date. But I know Caicos has registered land. All of this lawyers looking up titles going back 30 years. No, they don't do that. So here in the Bahamas, we have unregistered land. And that's why every time someone is purchasing a piece of property or transferring property, you have to go to a lawyer who has to check the title. So what they're really doing is what we call an abstract. They're looking at the title, deeds, the conveyances, any mortgages over the land. They're looking for a confirmation of the release of mortgages. They're doing searches to see if there are any claims against that land, any assignment of that property, and of course, any other schedule to deal with that property. So the collection of the deeds and the title deeds has to show what they call a chain of title. And it concludes with the vendor being the last person in that chain. And that last person in the chain is what they call the legal owner of record. So when there's unregistered land, land transfers by deed. So it's written. Even if it is a gift, it is written. So when a purchaser or a mortgagee investigates the seller's title, any other matters that affect the land or its value, whatever the case may be, all of that has to be done when they're doing the abstract of title. So title to unregistered land is not shown not only by the possession of your title deeds, but the seller have to demonstrate to the purchaser that they have a good root title. So not because you have that piece of paper in your hand saying, I have the title deed to this land, means that you are the owner and fee simple absolute in possession. In order to do that, the lawyer has to go and prove that you have a good root title. And that means that the lawyer has to go back 30 years to prove that. So the title of land in Bahamian law is completed in a two-stage transaction. One is always the agreement for sale. And that's the one that binds the vendor and the purchaser. And it gives the terms and condition for the purchase of the property. Now, the agreement for sale doesn't transfer the title of the property. What it does is that it states that the vendor is going to produce to the purchaser's attorney an abstract of title. And that abstract of title will show that the title goes back to 30 years. And when you go back 30 years, remember what I said, that 30 years, you're looking at having a good root title. And that good root title can be either a conveyance, it could be a mortgage, or it can be an assent. And an assent is a document that's signed in law, and it comes from the personal representative of the deceased person. So let's say if a member of your family dies and they leave you a piece of property, then you would have a document that's called an assent, which means that you've legally inherited the property under the will or under the rules of intestacy. So the second step in terms of transferring title after the agreement for sale is the conveyance. And this transfers the title to the legal estate from the vendor to the purchaser. And under our law, the conveyance must be by deed. And that's to avoid fraud. So when you talk about Bahamian land law and all property transactions, there are quite a bit of pieces of legislation that you should become familiar with. One is the Conveyancing and Law of Property Act that deals with mortgages. You have the Law of Property and Conveyancing Condominium Act. You have the International Persons Landholding Act, that's with foreigners purchasing land. You have the Registration of Records Act. You have the Real Property Tax Act. You have the Stamp Duty Act. You have the VAT Act. You have the Quieting of Title Act, the Homeowners Protection Act, Environmental Planning and Protection Act, the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations. You have the Construction Contractors Act, and then you have the Credit Reporting Act and regulations. So all of these are part of dealing with land law in the Bahamas. Any questions?
Is the list that you called off just now in the manual?
Yes, it is.
That's gonna ask a question.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. So for homework, go ahead.
Just one quick question. I heard you said that, you know, the Caribbean Islands has registered
Property,
property,
land,
and
land.
registered land,
And yes,
Mhm.
and we have unregistered land.
correct.
If you were to get a piece of property, I heard you said to, like, let's say, for example, in the Turks and Caicos, because they have registered land, if you were to purchase a piece of property, you won't have to go and do these title searches. You just go and go to the.
Everything computerized.
Oh,
You can go and look up a piece of property and it'll tell you, go right, it has everything there where it passed from person to person.
oh, I got you.
Yes.
Okay, good. All
That's
right.
called, that's called registered land.
Okay, just wanted to know what was the difference. Okay, great, thanks.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up some cases on adverse possession so you can understand this root title, what it means by root title. And then I'll just randomly just pick a couple people to present those for next class. Okay,
Okay, yes, ma'am.
so I'll make sure I remember the office to send the manuals out for those who didn't get any. They should know, right?
Yes. Now the challenge that James and I have, we're in Freeport, so we have to wait extra for once the Nassau office gets it, we have to wait for it to come in the pouch. So we won't have access to it as quickly.
But you'll have it before next Monday or before
Yes,
Friday.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
I tell them make sure that it gets to you to get to the pouch or whoever you have to speak to in terms of from your office to make sure that the pouch leaves so you can get it and read it. And then I'm gonna send some, I'll send some cases.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll just give you a little bit of advice, study advice. When I assign the cases, let's just say I send 4 or I send 5 out, depends on what topic we're doing. Please read it, because what happens is when you have the exam, you read the question, you say, oh, this question is about that. We did have a case, but you didn't read it. You see what I mean? And so then you're grasping and grasping and grasping, when even if you had read it once, and then participated in the discussion in class, you'll be able to write something in response to the question. So it's just a little hint. Try not to overlook the cases, read them, and it'll really help you to understand land law. All right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Crystal, look to see what Jamaica has.
Thank you, Ms. Archer.
Okay, all right. So look out for my email. I'll probably put it together and let Miguel send it to everybody.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
All
you,
right.
thank you.
All right. You're most welcome.
I have to message her. Hi, Ms. Archer.
Yes.
So, Mr. Novia, the course will run from 6:30 to 8.
Roughly, yeah. Some nights it may be a little
Oh,
short if the chapters are short. You'll see when you get your book.
oh, okay, okay. Just trying to get an
Yeah.
idea how to
Yeah.
allocate time.
Round about there. I wouldn't spend a lot of time once you have your book going through everything. You'll spend more time
Right.
looking and discussing the cases.
Yes.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
cases
All right,
make you
thank you.
understand better how the courts come to decisions.
Right. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Not a problem.
Okay,
Okay, have a good
so
evening.
we can
Go ahead.
go in and pick up the books tomorrow?
I can send a message now to make sure. How many? How
Okay.
many?
They're gonna send it, Katura. They're sending it.
Or to the branch? So
Yeah,
I'm
they're gonna send it.
Lakeisha Ferguson is collecting all of them. They're packaged and go to her, and then she'll distribute them, from my understanding.
Okay. Oh, okay then.
Well, I
But I'll
didn't go
just
to the
make sure.
training department, no.
Mm,
You see what I'm
I'll
saying?
just, yeah. I'll just make sure that they're all distributed for tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
That's
I
the.
would have done this, I would have done this sort of my own initiative.
Oh, okay. So how are you gonna get your book? You just gonna go to the office to pick it up?
That's what I'm trying to confirm now.
Yeah, you can do
Okay.
that.
But
You can do that.
Victoria, you can do that because I got mine. I went to the office and got mine today. So you can
I
do
did
that
the
with the
same thing.
individual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much.
All right. Okay. I'll let Mr. Pratt know.
Okay, appreciate
Okay.
that.
All right. All right. Good
Okay, so
evening.
we're done for tonight?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Miss
Oh.
Archer.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Arthur.
you.
Good
Good
night.
evening, everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Good evening,
All
everyone.
right. Good evening.